neighborhoods.
Wind was down and get it hunker and have a mattress over me. And I was laying in there, and all of a sudden I heard this crash, and I took my flashlight.
Terrifying, honestly. There was a lot of noise. I mean, we thought the windows were going to break at any time. We had the inside windows kind of barricaded in with mattresses. I mean, we did whatever we could, just kind of hunker down and tried to wait it out.
You live on the coast, this is what you get. So it's just a matter of picking up the pieces and putting it back together.
And in that regard, Florida Governor Rick Scott vowing the recovery effort will be all hands on deck.
We are deploying a massive wave of response. We will be sending help from air, land, and sea. This includes thousands of responders for power restoration, medical search and rescue. We will recover, and we'll do it together. Florida is unbreakable, and we'll get through this together. Hurricane Michael cannot break Florida.
The monster Category 4 hurricane now downgraded to a tropical storm, but the danger is far from over as it moves from central Georgia into South Carolina and beyond. Jonathan Seri is live in the storm's wake in Panama City Beach. Jonathan, what are you seeing?
Good morning, John. Now that the sun's up, people are slowly coming back and surveying the damage. We're seeing damages great and small, starting with this picnic table here, picked up by the winds, destroyed. Some of the roofing taken out off of this beachside home. And then as you pan over here to this other beachfront home, you can see the fence was knocked down. And then take a look at the parking lot of this condominium complex. The fences were knocked down here. Ordinarily, you think of these high rises as being very sturdy structures, and they are, but the winds from Hurricane Michael were so extreme that as you pan up to the top of this condominium complex, you can see that much of the roof was stripped off, the facade on the top level peeled away from this building, and then as you pan down, some of the windows on the lower levels were blown out by the extreme winds. This is just a snapshot of some of the damage on this coastal community here. As far as the airport, the Northwest Beaches International Airport in Panama City, airport officials have been hoping to fully reopen for business sometime today. That apparently is not going to happen. Although the airport is open and operational, they are suspending all commercial flights until further notice as they continue to assess the damage. John?
Wow. And in terms of, people coming back, you said folks are starting to return to see the damage, but that's specifically what Governor Scott asked them not to do.
Yes. And those are just the people who decided to hunker down, many of them having regrets that they did this because the storm was so powerful and so terrifying when it came ashore. Those who stayed here on this barrier island community are able to walk about and inspect the damage at their own risk. But as far as emergency officials, the official word is it's too dangerous for evacuees to return at this point. If you have left this area, stay off the road until utility crews and other service providers can clear all the debris. Even driving here from our hotel, which is in this same city for us, just a couple miles away, was treacherous. We had to navigate around some fallen trees and some down utility poles. So I would not recommend it to anyone to drive in this community until they can clear all the debris away.
It was, I'm sure, a terrifying.
The Cajun Navy is saving lives. Where are these first responders heading today? Todd Terrell, founder and president of the United Cajun Navy, joins us now by phone. Todd, as always, thank you for you and the volunteers that work with you for your efforts to...
This storm here is reminiscent of Katrina to us. We actually came in yesterday in the Panama City once the storm it was safe for us to enter. And we came in with our mobile command, and we came in there, and we've actually been rescuing. And since yesterday, I guess around 5:30 or so, we hadn't stopped. We went all night. We pulled people from rubble and stuff. It's been a treacherous thing. It's a disaster zone. The city's pretty much locked down. We're inside of it, helping rescue, and then we're trying to get some supplies in. just basic stuff. But it's a disaster.
Your group is made up of all volunteers that come in from all over. You welcome people who just want to come in and help save lives. Can you give us an example of some of the rescues that have taken place so far?
Well, yesterday evening around 9 o'clock, we get a call. We get a lot of calls on our Facebook page, United Cajun Navy. And we get a lot of messages from people that have medical emergencies. And one of them was a lady that was in her 80s, and actually the house had collapsed on her, and she was in the corner, and she was all cut up and bloodied up. And the family had called us. They were panicked because they were on the phone with her when the tree fell, and they lost contact with her. So we went to that address. We actually had to cut our way 3 blocks with chainsaws to go down the road to get to her. And when we got there, it took about 10 of us, and 10 of my guys actually cut the rubble away from her and rescued her. So that was probably the best thing we did yesterday. She was minutes away from dying. And on our mobile command, we have doctors and nurses that always are with us in a disaster, and they were able to stabilize her.
How many volunteers do you have working with you right now?
Right now, on the ground inside of Panama City, we have 72. I've got hundreds of them that are waiting to come in. It's just a struggle to get them in. We're limited on fuel right now. We're down to about 100 gallons of fuel, and that's a big problem that we're having right now is the couple of vehicles we have in there is keeping them fueled up. So we've got a couple of hundred volunteers that are at the line waiting to get in. They just have to go around some roadblocks right now.
For the folks who did stay behind, what is the greatest need right now, would you say? Is it water? Is it something else?
I'll tell you what, this is reminiscent of Katrina to me. Being, back in Katrina in 2005, people have nothing. I mean, most of the people that we're dealing with, they don't even have the clothes they have on their back are wet. So basically, your basic necessities, food, water, and shelter. That's what everybody needs now. And from my standpoint, we've got trailloads of supplies that we're about to pour in right now. We're just trying to find a staging area that's going to be safe to where we can get these big trailers in with them. But right now, we're trying to get in water, ice, and just some basic canned goods.
Todd, just to remind everybody that you are an all-volunteer force, and this is people just wanting to step in and help. They bring their boats. They bring 18-wheelers. I don't know if that's being able to be used in some of the hardest hit areas because the flooding that still continues. But what sort of resources do you have to continue to help people on the ground there?
Well, this one here is not as much boats as it is just boots on the ground. Guys just going door to door, mainly chainsaws, cutting their way to the streets to get to the houses. That's the main thing right now. And I just want y'all to know, we are a volunteer organization. We're in Wilmington, and we're in the North Carolina area pretty strong right now, including helping them rebuild. So we're not just doing Florida. I mean, we're actually in 6 states right now with our volunteer group.
Were you surprised at how many people decided to try to ride this out?
I tell you what, I was very surprised. In fact, I still haven't figured it out. I know in North Carolina and South Carolina, I think what happened, a lot of people, when the storm got downgraded, they decided to stay, which was a mistake. But also in this here, for the life of me, I can't figure it out why so many people stayed. I can tell you this, we have a database of all the people that we pick up and rescue, and there's a lot of elderly and a lot of people that family lives out of town. So maybe that has something to do with families. I don't know. We're going to get to the bottom of it once we run all of our data.
The epicenter of the storm seems to be Mexico Beach, and we're looking at some video from that town right now. Just absolute rubble. Some of the older buildings there have been completely devastated. It is something to behold, and you have to worry that there are people who stayed behind who thought they would ride this one out that you just haven't heard from yet. It typically takes, doesn't it, Todd, 24 to 36 hours to really get your arms around how bad a storm like this can be?
Yes, unfortunately, we've experienced some of that in the last few hours, and I'm fearing that we're going to experience more of it. Just so you know, from my standpoint, doing this all the way back to Katrina, when we pick up a body or when we pick up a person that's alive or needs to be getting shelter, it's because they suffered a loss. So to me, I'm always seeing destruction. So this, to me, Mexico Beach and even a little bit west of there, it's total destruction. I mean, it reminds me of Katrina when there was not a single structure on the coast in Mississippi standing. I mean, it's worse than that.
Yeah, just to bring some of these new images, video, pictures that we're getting from Mexico Beach, Florida. This is Bay County, Florida. Small population, small area, but it is part of the Panama City, Lynn Haven area. Absolute destruction there. Do you have any of your rescue workers on the ground in Mexico Beach, Todd, before we let you go?
We're in Lynn Haven. Mexico Beach is so utter destruction, we can't even get in there ourselves.
Wow.
So, no, we don't have any in there. Now, we are bringing in some planes and some drones that are coming in the next hour or two, so it'll give us a little bit better picture. We have heavy-lift drones that can actually go in, spot somebody on the ground, and we can even go in and drop them supplies with drones. Wow. So that's a resource that we have that's new technology. So that's what we're working on right now, trying to see who may need medical supplies or anything in there. If we can't get to them, at least we can get them stable.
Todd Terrell with the Cajun Navy. You're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing, Todd.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
President Trump is demanding answers about the disappearance of that Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, was last seen entering the Saudi consulate in Turkey. The Saudi government is denying claims he was killed on orders of Saudi leadership. Rich Edson's live at the State Department with the latest on this. Rich, we've been following this story from the beginning. Very few details still and very little that we know, but what are we learning now?
Yeah, incredible story, Sandra. And President Trump says American investigators are there working with Saudi and Turkish officials trying to figure out what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. He went into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul last week and then disappeared. Turkish officials through state media claim Saudi assassins murdered and dismembered Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia has denied involvement. President Trump just called into Fox News saying it appears Khashoggi went into the Saudi consulate, never came out.
I don't like it at all. Now, you don't have American citizens, but that in this case doesn't matter. I don't like it. I don't like it with respect to reporters. It's a terrible, terrible precedent.
The president says it would be a very sad thing if Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman were involved. The Washington Post reports that U.S. intelligence intercepts reveal that the Crown Prince ordered an operation to lure and detain Khashoggi. The State Department will only say the United States had no advance knowledge of Khashoggi's disappearance. A bipartisan group of senators on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee have triggered an investigation, writing a letter to the president saying, quote, the recent disappearance of Saudi journalist and Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi suggests that he could be a victim of gross violation of internationally recognized human rights. We request that you make a determination on the imposition of sanctions, and that would be required under the Magnitsky Act. As for blocking arms sales to Saudi Arabia, the president told Shannon Bream last night that that would harm the U.S. economy, though he's still waiting to see how this investigation plays out. Sandra, John, back to you.
Rich Edson at the State Department. Thank you, Rich.
A lot left to learn there. First Lady Melania Trump speaking out about intrigue inside the administration, what she says about trust, and how she's trying to help watch her husband's back.
A top member of the Obama administration going even further than Hillary Clinton in rejecting the idea of civility in politics. Our A-team just ahead.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Do you know which investment could be your best performer this year? Stocks, real estate, bonds? None of the above. It's silver. It's trending higher. And if silver returns to its all-time high, that's over a 200% increase. Call now to get this free report. First-time callers also get this free 1-gram silver bar.
If I could only invest in one thing, it'd be silver. Silver is running out. It's in short supply. It's one of the greatest investments you could have right now.
Call Lear Capital for your free report, Sky High Silver. See why silver could skyrocket 50% this year. Why financial experts and investment banks are hoarding silver at today's low price. And how silver can help protect your savings from global turmoil.
Investing in silver is the perfect way to protect your wealth.
Ask how you can get up to $2,000 in...
That's what this new Democratic Party is about.
Well, you heard it right. Former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder trying to fire up Democrats. Let's go to our A-team. James Freeman, assistant editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial page and the co-author of Borrowed Time. Kayleigh McEnany, spokeswoman for the Republican National Committee, the RNC, and Jessica Tarlov, a Fox News contributor. Thanks to all of you for being here. First off, Kayleigh, How's that going over?
Not going over well. I mean, you had our chairwoman on earlier who said she challenges any Democrat to come out and say we reject this kind of talk. But we're not hearing that. We're hearing doubling down from Hillary Clinton saying that you should be uncivil toward Republicans. And one of the most overlooked sound bites was not the initial Maxine Waters one where she said to push against Trump officials, but her second one where she said literally verbatim, I threaten Trump supporters all of the time. In a context where Steve Scalise was shot, where there was literally a switchblade attack against a Republican candidate, where you have Rand Paul's ribs broken. In that kind of context, Democrats are acting entirely irresponsible in what they're doing.
Let's have a Democrat respond to that. Jessica?
I don't think he should have said it, but there is also more to his quote. He went on to say, when I say we kick them, I don't mean we do anything inappropriate. We don't do anything illegal, but we have to be tough and we have to fight. And what Eric Holder is talking about is the fact that Republicans never give up. If Brett Kavanaugh had been our nominee for the Supreme Court, Democrats would have run for him when Dr. Ford came forward. Republicans doubled down. Republicans, what they did with Merrick Garland, Democrats wouldn't have done that. Even look what we did with Al Franken, right? Pushed him out right away. That's what Eric Holder's talking about. Michelle Obama has come out this morning and actually gone against what Eric Holder said. And I think the fact actually that Republicans are focusing on this and talking about the mob-like left, et cetera, means that they just want to change the focus away from what's going on here. They are down 30 points with millennials by a ratio of 2 to 1. Americans think that the GOP tax cuts favor corporate America. They're not winning on health care, and so they need to demonize us and make it out like we're going to go and we're going to be kicking Republicans. No one is kicking a Republican, so they don't have to talk about the issues.
But, James, when you pair it with what Hillary Clinton said, I want to play this for you and then get your reaction on the other side. Listen.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again.
That's why you have political parties, so you can argue about what the best policies are. There are a lot of conservatives and Republicans who didn't like, what got enacted during 8 years of the Obama administration.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Clinton obviously about to kick off the next leg of her global grievance tour. Bill Clinton coming along. They're selling tickets now. There may be an effort there to kind of fire up the crowd, but it is irresponsible language. It's disappointing, but to your point, I think it's also radical policy as well. You mentioned health care. As the president pointed out this week, most Democrats in the House have endorsed a plan to tear up every health care plan in the United States and replace it with a government-run system. So yes, the language is radical. The policies, I think, similar to 2016, are not going to be acceptable despite what flaws people see on the Republican side.
The president has responded to this rhetoric, Kaylee, and he said, be careful with this rhetoric because it's very dangerous, and specifically referencing what Eric Holder said. What did he mean by that?
Well, he's meaning that in the context of what we're seeing. I listed all of those attacks we're seeing against Republicans. You're seeing protesters banging on the doors of the Supreme Court, accosting people in elevators and airports. And in that context, the president says, this is dangerous to say, and he's right. And I just want to quickly challenge something Jessica said. You said that the left would have run from Justice Kavanaugh. Not true. The left never ran from Bill Clinton. The left is not running from Keith Ellison, who has viable domestic abuse charges against him. The left embraces that kind of behavior and then makes false accusations against Justice Kavanaugh. But it's fine. If you want to continue to call for violence on the left, it's fueling our candidates. We're seeing McSally up by 6, Cruz up by 11, a new poll out today, Kevin Cramer in North Dakota up by 12. So the left's violence calls are fueling.
There before we move on.
Right now, currently in the latest polling, we saw the Democrats are up about 13 in the generic ballot. Yes, they are. Republicans may win seats in the Senate that Republicans should win. I don't know if we're going to win the House. I am hopeful of that. But for you to say that, and I've said the Keith Ellison thing is problematic, but his ex-girlfriend has also not turned over the tapes, right? She says that she has the attack on tape. She hasn't turned it over, and I am no fan of Keith Ellison's, and we've talked about this many, many times. For you to say that we are a party of violence, and I feel terrible about what happened to Steve Scalise, it's unclear if Rand Paul, I know now he's saying that the guy was yelling like, you're taking my health care or something, but that wasn't his original story there. I don't like mob-like tactics at all, but but I also don't like when President Trump leads chants of lock her up. I don't like when Ted Nugent calls for, what was it, for Obama to hang from a noose and then gets invited to the White House. There are people on both sides of the aisle, and I'm not talking about Eric Holder or Hillary Clinton, who use incredibly inappropriate rhetoric that is dangerous. But that is not what my party is about, and I really resent.
It happens on a daily basis.
On that, I want to bring in, and James, we'll get you to respond to this first. Melania Trump granted this one-on-one interview. She sat down with ABC. It aired this morning, and there was this exchange on bullying and her Be Best campaign. Listen to this.
What happened to you personally, or what did you see personally that you thought you wanted to tackle this issue?
I could say I'm the most bullied person on the world.
You think you're the most bullied person in the world?
One of them, if you really see what people are saying about me. That's why my Be Best initiative is focusing on social media and online behavior. We need to educate the children of social emotional behavior, so when they grow up and they know how to deal with those issues.
Yeah, I think you can expect from her opponents, there's going to be a lot of Twitter commentary pointing out life has worked out pretty well for her. What is she talking about? But I think she has a good point. If you look at the intensity of the criticism on the part of the media in terms of basically everything she wears when she goes on a trip is immediately attacked as being inappropriate in some way. This past week, the New York Times criticized her hat as being a symbol of colonial rule. This is the same hat, by the way, that they used to think was a wonderful fashion item until it was worn by Melania Trump.
Oh, listen, I think she looked amazing on that trip, and I do think she should, she looks like she's out of vogue, and I always stand by that. Michelle Obama certainly had some terrible things said about her. We all do remember how offensive it was that she exposed her arms. Melania Trump sounds so out of touch. I'm the most bullied person in the world. I'd say, Matthew Shepard was probably the most bullied person in the world. People are dying every day because of bullying. They suffer from depression and anxiety. They can't go to their classrooms. They can't go to work. I support the cause. Her husband is a terrible bully, and she should deal with that. But she sounds as out of touch, I would say, as Hillary Clinton.
But she was on the receiving end of an awful lot of, hateful commentary.
So is anyone in public life. Chelsea Clinton, what happened to her growing up?
You cannot compare, Michelle Obama, who was on so many magazine covers, to what Melania has gone through. People have literally made up stories about her immigration status, her marriage. When she had surgery, they came up with all kinds of conspiracy theories as to where she was. They've accused her of having a stunt double. They've gone after her child in relentless ways. None of us on this panel know what that is like, that kind of scrutiny. And meanwhile, I've had private conversations with Melania. I've had the pleasure of hearing her passion for helping children across this country. And she's doing a stellar job on the world stage. Her popularity is soaring and approval ratings. So, the media can attack her, but you can't stop her from doing all
She is my preferred Trump, I would say.
Before we move on, do we have time to play this last sound from that Melania Trump interview? Because it is fascinating. Let's see if we can listen real quick.
He's been in office now almost 2 years. Has he had people that you didn't trust working for him?
Yes.
Did you let him know?
I let him know.
And what did he do?
Well, some people, they don't work there anymore, and it's very difficult sometimes because I'm so busy with my office, I don't get involved with West Wing.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
What did you think of that?
People he can't trust in the West Wing.
Yeah, certainly we saw that anonymous op-ed that was penned. So there are people that cannot be trusted, and I'm so grateful that he has Jared there and Ivanka and Melania and very smart individuals around him that are loyal and that he can trust, because I think it's unfortunate.
Well, we don't know that op-ed came from the West Wing, of course. It could be one of 8,000 people in the federal government who are senior officials.
It could have been the New York Times. He said, I don't think so. It's not there.
Thousands of people are senior executives in the federal government. But I think you're seeing from her what you see in the president's comments and Twitter feed. I think that was an honest answer. And sometimes maybe the press will reflect on how transparent, refreshingly transparent, sometimes alarmingly transparent this White House is. But I think that was an honest response.
All right, I'm glad we got it all in there. Thank you very much to our HQ.
Thank you.
Good to have all three of you.
Now, this Fox News alert: the Panhandle devastated by the wrath of Hurricane Michael. Homes, trees ripped apart. Still, many people decided to ride out the storm, including former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. He joins us live from Florida with his story. Plus,
Why did Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein cancel his meeting on Capitol Hill? We're going to have more reaction on this from lawmakers and the president.
He mentioned certain things to me that, are very positive about that event, and I would imagine that you'd want to put that down. And frankly, whether you were under oath or not shouldn't matter.
Right.
But he mentioned things to me that I would think would be fine for him to testify.
I'd like to take a moment to address my fellow veterans, because I know so many of you have served our country honorably. One of the benefits that we as a country give you as a veteran is the eligibility for a VA loan for up to 100% of your home's value. If you need cash for your family, call New Day USA. With automatic authority from the VA.
Hurricane Michael went through and caused massive amounts of devastation along the Florida panhandle, as well as moved through southwest Georgia last night and continues to push its way through South Carolina and North Carolina as we speak. So the event is still ongoing. For citizens in North Carolina and South Carolina, please make sure you're listening to all the local warnings that are pushing forward.
Meanwhile, a path of catastrophic destruction in Mexico Beach, a small tourist town just down the coast from Panama City, where Hurricane Michael made landfall. And as you can see, the damage there is just absolutely horrific. Rescuers are having trouble even getting in. One resident capturing the storm on video, describing a sea of debris floating in the floodwaters there. She said visibly reduced dramatically dramatically reduced the ability to see. She said you could barely see anything, and that from her vantage point, all of the nearby houses were submerged at one point. Joining us now by phone,
former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. He's an eyewitness to all of this. He rode out the storm in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. So it sounds, Governor, like the eye passed a little bit to the east of you. It must have been pretty scary.
Well, John, we were very fortunate, if you want to call it that. But if you're on the left side of a hurricane, which for me, it's the only time I ever want to be on the left side of anything. But in this case, that's where we were. And that means that most of our wind actually came from the north as the hurricane was coming back around in its counterclockwise rotation. But we had relatively little damage compared to what's happened east of us, where it's just mass devastation. From Panama City Beach, which is about 20 miles east of us, on eastward from there all the way to Apalachicola and beyond, devastating losses and destruction. And so it was scary in a lot of ways. You know, it's one of those things you don't really want to go through again. But I will say that there was extraordinary coordination. Governor Rick Scott did a magnificent job in staging assets in advance of the storm. The preparations for it, even though there weren't the level of warnings, it wasn't like we had several days. This thing kind of popped up on Saturday, Sunday, and then it got much worse, escalating to a Cat 4 during the night before it actually hit. So there was, fortunately, a lot of preparation done in advance. This would have been a much worse storm in terms of loss of life had there not been the level of leadership on the part of Governor Scott, FEMA, and local emergency management officials.
Well, some of these pictures, Governor Huckabee, that we're seeing now coming in from Mexico Beach, just complete destruction there. We just spoke to the Cajun Navy, the head of the Cajun Navy, who said they haven't even been able to get in there yet. But you rode this out in your home in Santa Rosa Beach, and some of your neighbors who couldn't ride it out in their homes, you welcomed them in yours. We
did have neighbors who sheltered with us because our home is relatively new. It's built to exceed the latest hurricane codes. It's not, you know, something that you're so foolish about to say, well, it's indestructible. The people on the Titanic thought that. But as much as it is humanly possible to engineer a structure that is designed specifically to withstand, you know, a hurricane, I think, you know, that's what, when we built this house, is what we did. It managed fine. There were a lot of features in the house, hurricane screens and so on. It reminds us of why we spent that money to build it this way, and certainly makes me glad we did.
Well, you've got water very close by. As you look around today, what kind of damage are you seeing?
The water damage was relatively small. We had a very angry Gulf of Mexico yesterday that was providing for us waves 20, 29 feet high, something we'd never seen before. But again, because of the fact that most of our wind, the most heavy part of it blew from the north, when the waves would have been at their worst, the wind was pushing them back. And so it gave us a little relief. Now, further to the east, where it was coming ashore directly, that's where you see this extraordinary devastation like they experienced at Mexico Beach, as well as in many parts of Panama City Beach, where that was a direct force wind of up to 150 miles an hour, 155, just short of a Cat 5. And there's just not much that anybody can do when the winds are that heavy. And those are tornado-level winds by far, but they're sustained winds over several hours. So it's not just like it comes through, blows, and gone. It comes in, it stays, and that wind is on the ground for quite some time. And that's why, these hurricane events can be so incredibly devastating to property.
Governor Huckabee, so glad to hear you're doing okay, and those around you, your neighbors, you were able to help out. We spoke to Senator Marco Rubio at the top of the show of Florida, and he was talking about the need for housing. There are so many that are just plain left without their homes, and it is a situation perhaps that no one could have predicted. What is that going to be like? Obviously, rescue efforts are ongoing at this moment, and rebuilding is another thing, but some completely left without homes.
Long-term, Senator, that's going to be one of the great challenges because this is a tourist area, as you well know, and that means you have an enormous number of people in the service industry. Affordable housing for people who work in the tourist industry is already a challenge. When you add to that the destruction of a lot of homes and a lot of housing, apartments, trailer parks, et cetera, where people have been living, the ones most susceptible to being destroyed, the time it takes just to rebuild is extraordinary. So there's going to be a huge economic impact over a long period of time, I would say for 18 months or so, as not only is just a matter of cleaning up the debris. That's not that difficult. I mean, you know what's on the ground, you get it up, you get it out of there. Mm-hmm. But rebuilding, that's something altogether different, and it will be a real challenge to find affordable and immediate housing that will take care of the people who live here year-round, as well as the ones who serve the tourist industry, and then getting those condominiums, the hotels, the restaurants back up to operation. At least it's during the winter, it's the off-season, but there's still going to be enormous challenges. I will say there's going to be a great level of construction industry activity that will be going on for the next many months.
And we pray for all those involved and all those affected by this massive storm. Governor Mike Huckabee, glad you're all right. Thanks for the phone call in.
Great to talk to you guys. Take care.
Thanks, Governor. Many Republican lawmakers are furious after Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein cancels his meeting on Capitol Hill. He was supposed to discuss a report that claims he wanted to secretly record the president. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes on Hannity last night.
Clearly, what this is the investigators who have no one watching them, no one to investigate them, and they're running amok. Running amok so much that they won't even come and testify to Congress. It's pretty pathetic.
Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is in Washington with more details. Catherine.
Thank you, John, and good morning. A short time ago, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, confirming to Fox News that the deputy attorney general told the president his comments about secretly recording the president after he fired FBI Director James Comey last year were sarcastic. Giuliani also